I opened my eyes in the intensive care unit of Mount Sinai Hospital on March 14th at exactly 2:17 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because the clock on the wall directly across from my bed was the first thing I focused on when consciousness returned. My chest ached with every breath, tubes ran from my arms, and the steady beep of the heart monitor reminded me that 72 hours ago, that same heart had stopped beating for almost 4 minutes. But none of that pain compared to what I heard next. Through the partially open door to my room, I could hear my daughter Cassie's voice. She was speaking on her phone in the hallway, and she was laughing, actually laughing. "Baby, I'm telling you, it worked perfectly," she said, her voice bright with excitement. "The hospital accepted the medical power of attorney without questioning it. I met with the real estate broker this morning, and the Park Avenue apartment is already listed. 4.2 million. We should have the money in escrow within 2 weeks." I felt my heart rate spike. The monitor beside me beeped faster, louder, but I forced myself to breathe slowly, to stay still, to keep my eyes half closed. I needed to hear this. "Marcus, stop worrying," Cassie continued. Her heels clicked against the linoleum floor as she paced. "The neurologist said she could be in this coma for weeks, maybe months. Even if she wakes up, by then everything will be done. The Hamptons house goes up tomorrow, and Dorothy already found a buyer interested in the Brooklyn commercial building. We're looking at 8.7 million total, maybe more. 8.7 million. My properties, my life's work, being sold while I lay here fighting to survive." "I love you too," Cassie said softly. "We're going to have everything we dreamed about. You can pay off those men, and we can finally start our life together. I know my mother never approved of you, but she doesn't get to control my life anymore. I'll see you tonight. We'll celebrate." The call ended. I heard her heels clicking away down the corridor, getting fainter, until there was only the mechanical breathing of hospital machinery and the thundering of my own pulse in my ears. My daughter, my only child. The little girl I had raised alone after Thomas died. The daughter I had given everything to, sacrificed everything for, was selling my empire out from under me while I lay in a coma. Except I wasn't in a coma. Not anymore. Dr. Richard Foster came into my room 15 minutes later for his routine check. He was a kind man in his early 50s, with gentle hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When he leaned over to check my pupils with his penlight, I grabbed his wrist. His eyes widened in shock. "Mrs. Ashford, you're awake, thank God. Let me call the—" "No?" My voice came out as a hoarse whisper, but it was firm. "Don't tell anyone, please." He stared at me, confusion written across his face. "I don't understand. Your daughter has been here every day. She's been so worried. She needs to know you're—" "My daughter," I interrupted, my throat burning with every word, "is currently in the process of selling all of my properties using a fraudulent power of attorney. I just heard her on the phone discussing it. If you tell her I'm awake, I lose any chance of stopping this and understanding how deep this betrayal goes." Dr. Foster's expression shifted from confusion to shock to something like anger. He had been Thomas's oncologist 6 years ago. He knew our family. He knew what I had been through. "How long do you need?" he asked quietly. 48 hours. I need to make calls, gather evidence, understand the full scope of what she's done. Can you do that for me? Can you keep this between us for 2 days? He looked at my chart, then back at me. Medically, I can justify keeping you under observation without announcing full consciousness. But Mrs. Ashford, if you're awake, you should be— Please, Richard. I used his first name deliberately. I've known you for 6 years. You held my hand when Thomas took his last breath. I'm asking you to trust me now. 2 days. That's all I need. He was silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 48 hours. But if your condition changes, if there are any complications, I'm ending this immediately. Your health comes first. Thank you. Relief flooded through me, almost as powerful as the betrayal still burning in my chest. After he left, I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. How had this happened? How had my Cassie, my baby girl, become someone who would do this? And who was this Marcus she kept mentioning? The name was vaguely familiar, but my thoughts were still foggy from the medications, the trauma of the heart attack, the shock of what I'd discovered. I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes again, it was dark outside. The clock read 8:43, and sitting in the chair beside my bed, scrolling through her phone, was Cassie. She looked tired. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, Thomas's eyes. Her brown hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, not her usual designer outfits. For a moment, just a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort. Then her phone lit up with a text message, and I saw her smile. That calculating, satisfied smile. She typed back quickly, and I caught a glimpse of the contact name. Marcus, my love. I know, baby, she whispered to the phone as she typed. Just a few more days, then we're free. Free. As if I were a prison she was escaping, not the mother who had given her everything. She stood up, leaned over, and kissed my forehead. The gesture felt obscene, a mockery of motherhood. Good night, Mom, she said softly. I hope you're having peaceful dreams. Then she left, her expensive handbag, the Hermes Kelly bag I'd bought her for her 30th birthday, $22,000, swinging from her shoulder. The moment the door closed behind her, I opened my eyes fully. My hands were shaking, not from the heart attack, but from rage, pure, cold rage. I reached for the call button, not to summon a nurse, but to access the phone system. Most people didn't know that from hospital beds. If you knew the right codes, you could make outside calls. Thomas had taught me that during his long stays. I dialed the number I knew by heart. Dorothy Chen answered on the second ring. Vivian Ashford's office, this is Dorothy. Dot, it's me. There was a sharp intake of breath. Viv? Oh my God. They said you were in a coma. Are you? I'm awake, and I need you to listen very carefully because we don't have much time. For the next 20 minutes, I told her everything. The conversation I'd overheard, Cassie's plans, the properties being sold. Dorothy, my best friend for 30 years and the best estate attorney in New York, listened without interrupting. I could hear her typing, taking notes, her mind already working through the legal implications. The power of attorney she's using, Dorothy said slowly when I finished. Viv, you never signed one. I would know. I handle all your legal documents. Exactly, which means it's forged, which means everything she's doing is fraud. I'll get a forensic document examiner on it first thing tomorrow, and I'll file emergency injunctions to freeze all property transactions. But Viv, there's something you need to know. Something I discovered 2 weeks ago that I was planning to tell you. But then you had the heart attack and... What is it? Marcus Hawthorne. That's the boyfriend's full name, right? Yes. How did you... I ran a background check when Cassie first mentioned him 8 months ago. Vivian, he's not who he says he is. He was a stockbroker, that part is true, but he was fired 3 years ago for insider trading and fraud. He's also got a serious gambling problem. I found records of debts to some very dangerous people, the kind of people who break legs when you don't pay. My chest tightened, but not from the heart condition. How much does he owe? $340,000 to a Russian loan shark operating out of Brighton Beach. And Viv, the payment deadline is in 3 weeks. Suddenly, everything made terrible sense. The urgency in Cassie's voice, the timeline she'd mentioned. This wasn't just about my daughter being greedy or spoiled. This was about Marcus using her, manipulating her love and her access to my money to save his own skin. There's more, Dorothy continued. I did some deeper digging. Marcus has a history. 2 previous relationships with wealthy women. Both ended when the women's bank accounts mysteriously dried up. One filed charges, but dropped them when he disappeared. The other is still looking for him. He's a con artist. A very good one. And your daughter is his current mark. I closed my eyes, feeling tears slip down my cheeks for the first time since waking up. She doesn't know, does she? She thinks he loves her. I don't think she has any idea what he really is. From what I've observed, she's completely under his spell. Viv, I'm so sorry. I should have told you about this sooner, but you kept saying you wanted to let her make her own mistakes, learn her own lessons, and I thought, you thought I had time. We both did. We didn't know he'd move this fast. I wiped my eyes. Dot, I need you to do something for me, something that's going to sound crazy. Name it. Do you remember the testaments, the multiple versions I created over the years? There was a pause. The testing protocol. Yes. You created 4 different versions, each with different conditions, all properly notarized and dated, but only one actually registered as your official last will. Exactly. I need you to figure out which one Cassie found, which one she's using to justify this power of attorney claim. I can do that, but why? Because I want to know exactly how much she knows, how deep into my papers she went, what she thinks she's entitled to. And then I want to let her keep thinking she's won. Vivian, what are you planning? I smiled, though there was no humor in it. I'm planning to give my daughter the most important lesson of her life. The lesson I should have taught her years ago when I was too busy building an empire and running from grief. I'm going to show her the difference between inheritance and earning something, between being given everything and deserving anything. How? First, you're going to install security cameras with audio in my penthouse. The ones I had installed 2 months ago. I want you to access those recordings. I need to know exactly what Cassie and Marcus have been saying, planning, doing in my home. Already on it, I can have the recordings by tomorrow morning. Second, you're going to let the property sales proceed just enough to seem legitimate, then freeze everything at the last possible moment. I want her to think it's working, that she's getting away with it. Risky. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong because you're the best attorney in New York. Third, and this is crucial, I need you to prepare documentation proving that power of attorney is forged. Get the forensic expert, get comparisons to my real signature. Build an airtight case. Done. What else? Get me Marcus Hawthorne's complete history, every detail, every debt, every con, every victim. I want to know exactly who my daughter has fallen in love with. And I want evidence that will hold up in criminal court. Dorothy was quiet for a moment. You're going to have him arrested. I'm going to have him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. He's a predator, Dot. He found a vulnerable, naive woman with access to money, and he's exploiting her. Maybe if Cassie sees him in handcuffs, facing real consequences, she'll finally wake up. And if she doesn't? If she still chooses him over you? The question hung in the air. I thought about Cassie's smile as she texted him, the way she'd kissed my forehead while planning to steal everything I'd built, the years of enabling, of giving her everything without making her earn anything, of trying to buy her love because I was too broken to give her my time. Then at least she'll have learned that actions have consequences, I said finally, that you can't betray the people who love you without paying a price, and maybe, just maybe, she'll have the chance to become the woman she was meant to be, instead of the spoiled child I created. When are you planning to reveal that you're awake? Tomorrow morning I'll tell Dr. Foster to make the announcement. But Dot, I need you here when Cassie arrives, and I need you to bring the documentation. All of it. It's time for the curtain to come down on this particular performance. I'll be there at 9. Viv, are you sure about this? Once you confront her, there's no going back. Your relationship with Cassie will never be the same. I looked at the IV in my arm, felt the ache in my chest where my heart had literally broken 3 days ago. Our relationship was never what I thought it was, Dot. It's time we both faced the truth. All of it. We hung up. I lay in the dark, listening to the machines keeping me alive, thinking about the little girl with Thomas's green eyes who used to beg me to read her bedtime stories. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost her. Or maybe I'd never really known her at all. Maybe I'd been so busy running from my grief, building my empire, proving I could survive without Thomas, that I'd failed to see my daughter turning into someone I didn't recognize. But that ended now. Win or lose, Cassie was going to face reality, and I was going to face the consequences of my own failures as a mother. Tomorrow, when I opened my eyes for the first time in front of my daughter, I would be ready. Ready to see who she really was. Ready to test whether any part of the girl I'd raised still existed underneath the woman who could sell her own mother's home while she lay dying. And ready, finally, to do what I should have done years ago. Stop protecting Cassie from the consequences of her choices and start preparing her for a life where nobody would hand her anything. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside me. My heart, broken and repaired, beating strong. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight, I just had to survive the knowledge that my daughter, my only child, had chosen a con artist's promises over her own mother's life. I closed my eyes and waited for morning. I suppose I should explain how I got here. How a woman who built an $18 million real estate empire from nothing ended up in a hospital bed, betrayed by her own daughter. The story doesn't start with the heart attack. It starts 6 years ago in another hospital room, holding the hand of the only man I ever loved as he took his last breath. Thomas Ashford died on September 23rd at 3:37 in the morning. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. We had 2 years from diagnosis to death, 2 years of watching the strongest man I'd ever known waste away to nothing. He was 58 years old. We'd been married for 31 years. Cassie was 26 then, fresh out of college with a degree in art history that she'd never used. She blamed me for Thomas's death, though she never said it directly. It was in the way she looked at me during those final months, in the silences that grew between us. "Why are you at the office again, Mom?" she'd ask when I'd show up at the hospital at 8 instead of 6. "Dad's dying and you're closing real estate deals?" She didn't understand that work was the only thing keeping me sane. That if I sat in that hospital room 24 hours a day watching Thomas disappear, I would shatter into pieces I'd never be able to put back together. She didn't know that I cried in my car every morning before going into the office, that I kept a photo of Thomas in my desk drawer and looked at it between every phone call, that every property I acquired was a promise to him that I would survive, that I would take care of our daughter, that his death wouldn't destroy me. But Cassie only saw absence. She saw a mother who chose work over family, who couldn't even grieve properly. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was a coward who ran from pain instead of facing it. Thomas knew, though. 3 days before he died, during one of his few lucid moments, he held my hand and said, "Take care of our girl, Viv. She's going to need you more than ever when I'm gone. Don't let her drift. Don't let her become lost." I promised him I would. I promised I'd be there for her. I failed. After the funeral, after the tears and the casseroles and the sympathy cards stopped coming, I threw myself into work with an intensity that frightened even Dorothy. Thomas had left us $800,000 in life insurance. I took that money and started investing in Manhattan real estate with a precision that bordered on obsession. I worked 18-hour days. I closed deals that men twice my age said were impossible. Within a year, I'd turned that $800,000 into $3 million. Within 3 years, $8 million. By year 5, I had my own firm, Ashford Properties, with a portfolio worth $16 million and climbing. And Cassie? I gave her everything money could buy. I put $15,000 in her bank account every month, more than most people earned in income. I bought her the penthouse apartment on the Upper West Side. I paid for her designer clothes, her spa memberships, her trips to Paris and Milan. When she said she wanted to try interior design, I bankrolled a boutique studio that closed within 8 months. When she decided to become a photographer, I bought her $20,000 in camera equipment that now sits unused in her closet. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought providing financial security was love. I thought if I gave her enough money, enough freedom, enough options, she'd find herself, find purpose, find happiness. Instead, I created a 32-year-old woman who'd never worked a real job in her life, who'd never paid her own rent, never budgeted, never understood the value of a dollar earned versus a dollar given, who drifted from hobby to hobby, relationship to relationship, always looking for something to fill the emptiness inside her. The men she brought home got progressively worse. First, there was James, the artist who borrowed $40,000 for a gallery showing that never happened. Then Connor, the entrepreneur whose startup failed 3 months after I invested $100,000. Then Sebastian, who at least had the decency to disappear on his own when his cocaine habit became obvious. Each time, I'd write the check to make them go away. Each time, Cassie would cry and scream that I was controlling her life, that I didn't want her to be happy, that I was a bitter widow who couldn't stand to see her daughter in love. And each time, a month later, she'd be fine, already moving on to the next disaster waiting to happen. I should have stopped. I should have cut her off, forced her to stand on her own feet, made her face consequences. But every time I thought about it, I'd remember Thomas's last words. Take care of our girl. So I did, in the only way I knew how, with money. Marcus appeared 8 months ago. Cassie met him at a charity gala I'd dragged her to. One of those $5,000 a plate events where wealthy Manhattanites pretend to care about art education while networking and drinking expensive wine. She came to my office the next day, glowing, more animated than I'd seen her in years. Mom, I met someone incredible, she said, sitting across from my desk in my corner office overlooking Fifth Avenue. His name is Marcus Hawthorne. He's a stockbroker, really successful, and he's just different. He actually listens to me. He sees me, you know? I should have been happy. Instead, I felt a cold knot of dread in my stomach. How old is he? 38. I know, a little older, but Mom, age is just a number. He's been through so much, lost everything in the market crash, had to rebuild from nothing. He understands what it's like to struggle. Red flags everywhere. But I smiled and said, I'd love to meet him. I met Marcus 2 weeks later at dinner at Le Bernardin. He was handsome, I'll give him that. 6 feet tall, athletic build, expensive suit that fit perfectly, blue eyes that held yours just a little too long, smile that seemed genuine until you noticed it never reached those eyes. He was charming, attentive to Cassie, respectful to me. He said all the right things about his career, his goals, his admiration for successful women like myself. And I knew instantly that he was lying. Everything about him was too perfect, too practiced. I'd spent 20 years negotiating with men in boardrooms. I knew when someone was performing. The next day, I called Dorothy. Run a complete background check on Marcus Devlin Hawthorne. Everything. Employment history, credit, criminal records, social media, former addresses, everything. What she found confirmed my worst fears. But when I tried to tell Cassie, she wouldn't listen. You just can't stand that I'm happy, she screamed at me in my penthouse 3 months ago. We'd been having dinner, one of our increasingly rare mother-daughter evenings, when I brought up what Dorothy had discovered. You've hated every man I've ever dated. You want me to be alone and miserable like you? Cassie, he was fired for fraud. He has a gambling problem. He's in debt to... You investigated him? You actually hired someone to investigate the man I love? Her face was red, tears streaming down her cheeks. What gives you the right to invade his privacy like that? To try to control who I love? I'm trying to protect you. This man is dangerous. He's using you for what, Mom? My money? I don't have any money. Everything is yours. I'm 32 years old, and I don't own a single thing in my own name. Not this apartment, not my car, nothing. It's all yours. So what exactly would he be using me for? The truth of her words hit me like a slap. She was right. I'd kept everything in my name, maintained control of every asset, never given her real ownership of anything. I'd told myself it was smart estate planning, protecting the family wealth. But maybe it was also about control, about making sure she always needed me. If you really loved me, Cassie continued, her voice breaking, you'd want me to be happy. You'd trust my judgment. But you don't, do you? You've never trusted me. You've never believed I could make good decisions on my own. Because if you did, you might actually have to give up control for once in your life. Cassie, please listen to me. Marcus is not who he says he is. The evidence is right here. I don't want to see your evidence. I don't want to hear another word about Marcus. You have a choice, Mom. You can accept that I'm in love with a good man who treats me well, or you can keep trying to destroy my happiness. But if you choose the second option, I'm done. I'm done with your controlling, your manipulation, your inability to let me live my own life. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to save you from making a terrible mistake. Then let me make it, she shouted. Let me make my own mistakes. Let me fall on my face if that's what happens. Stop trying to fix everything with money and power and connections. Just let me live. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I stood up, my heart pounding. Cassie, wait. Can't we just talk about this calmly? She turned back, and the look in her eyes was pure hurt. Do you know what the worst part is, Mom? Dad died 6 years ago and you still haven't cried. Not once. Not in front of me anyway. You just worked. You built your empire. You made your millions. But you never grieved. You never let yourself feel anything. And you expect me to take advice about relationships from someone who's been emotionally dead for 6 years? The door slammed behind her. That was 3 months ago. We barely spoke after that. She didn't return my calls. She skipped our weekly lunches. When I tried to reach out, she'd send brief text messages. Busy, talk later. I told myself she'd come around. That she'd see the truth about Marcus eventually. That she just needed time and space. I was giving her that space when my heart stopped beating 3 days ago. I'd been in my office reviewing contracts for a new property acquisition in Brooklyn. It was 10 at night. Not unusual for me. Dorothy had gone home hours ago, telling me to do the same. I was alone in the building, just me and the security guard downstairs. The pain started as pressure in my chest. I thought it was indigestion from the Chinese takeout I'd had for dinner. Then my left arm went numb. Then the pressure became crushing, squeezing, like my ribcage was collapsing inward. I managed to call 911 before I collapsed. The paramedics told me later that I'd technically died in the ambulance. My heart stopped for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. They shocked me back to life, got me to Mount Sinai, rushed me into surgery. And while I was unconscious, fighting to survive, my daughter found one of the testaments I'd created years ago and decided to sell my life's work to save her con artist boyfriend. That's how I got here. That's the chain of choices and failures and blind spots that led to this moment. A mother who worked too hard and loved too poorly, a daughter who never learned to stand on her own, and a predator who saw an opportunity and took it. Now, lying in this hospital bed, I had to decide what came next, how to save my daughter from herself, how to face the truth about my own failures, how to fix what I'd broken, if it could even be fixed at all. The clock on the wall ticked toward morning. In a few hours, Dr. Foster would make his announcement. Cassie would come running, and the real test would begin. Dorothy arrived at 8:45 the next morning, 15 minutes before Dr. Foster was scheduled to announce my miraculous recovery. She came dressed in her usual impeccable style, navy suit, pearls, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob that meant business. But her eyes were red-rimmed. She'd been crying, probably up all night working on what I'd asked her to do. She closed the door to my hospital room and pulled a chair close to my bed. I have everything, she said quietly, pulling an iPad from her briefcase. And Viv, it's worse than we thought. Show me. She pulled up the security footage from my penthouse first. The cameras I'd had installed 2 months ago, hidden in smoke detectors, picture frames, the corners of rooms, had captured everything. Dorothy had compiled the most damning clips into a single file. The first video was from 3 nights ago, the night of my heart attack. Cassie and Marcus were in my living room, the floor-to-ceiling windows behind them showing the Manhattan skyline I'd worked so hard to afford. Marcus was pacing, agitated, running his hands through his hair. "They're going to kill me, Cassie. Do you understand that? These aren't people who send collection letters. They break bones. They make people disappear. I have 3 weeks to come up with $340,000 or I'm dead." Cassie was crying, her hands shaking as she poured herself a drink from my bar, the Macallan 30-year, $300 a bottle. "I don't have that kind of money. Everything is in my mother's name. I've told you that. Then get it from her. She's worth millions. What's $300,000 to someone like her?" "I've asked, Marcus. I've begged. She won't give me anything unless I end our relationship. She thinks you're using me." Cassie's voice cracked. "She doesn't understand that you love me, that we're building a life together." Marcus stopped pacing and came to her, cupping her face in his hands. The tenderness in the gesture made me sick because I could see it for what it was: manipulation, performance. "Baby, listen to me. Your mother is never going to approve of us. She's a control freak who can't stand to see you happy. She wants you dependent on her forever." "I know, but nothing. You're 32 years old. When are you going to start living your own life? When are you going to stop letting her dictate every decision you make?" "What do you want me to do? I can't just take her money." Marcus pulled back, letting his hands drop. His voice changed, became colder. "Then I guess this is it. I'll disappear, and you'll never see me again. Because if I stay in New York, I'm a dead man. And honestly, maybe that's for the best. Maybe you're better off with Mommy controlling your life, telling you who you can love, keeping you as her little pet project." "No!" Cassie grabbed his arm. "Don't say that. I love you. I need you." "Then help me. That's what people who love each other do, Cassie. They help each other. They sacrifice for each other." He turned back to her, and his voice softened again. "I would do anything for you. Anything. I'd give up everything. Can you say the same about me?" The silence stretched. Then Cassie said quietly, "What if something happened to her?" Marcus went very still. "What do you mean?" "My mother, she's 57. She works herself to death, never exercises, lives on stress and Chinese takeout. What if she had a heart attack or something? If she died, I'd inherit everything. We could pay off your debts and finally be free." I felt ice in my veins watching this. My daughter, discussing my potential death like it was a business transaction. Marcus was silent for a long moment, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. Then he said carefully, "Baby, I would never want anything to happen to your mother. But you're right. She's not exactly living a healthy lifestyle. And if something did happen, naturally, you would inherit. Do you know where she keeps her will?" Dorothy paused the video and looked at me. "This was recorded at 11:30 p.m. on March 11th. You had your heart attack 6 hours later at 5:47 a.m. on March 12th. The timing was too coincidental." I felt my chest tighten. "Do you think they—" "No." Dorothy shook her head firmly. "I've looked at everything. There's no evidence they did anything to cause the heart attack. You have a family history of heart disease, you've been under enormous stress, and your diet and exercise habits are exactly as Cassie described. This was natural causes, Viv. Just horrifically bad timing. Or perhaps, I thought, the universe giving me exactly what I needed to see the truth." Dorothy played the next video. This one was from the morning after my heart attack, 12 hours after I'd been admitted to the hospital. Cassie was alone in my penthouse, going through my home office. She was methodical, opening drawers, reading through files. Then she found what she was looking for, one of the testaments I'd created. I watched her read it, saw her eyes widen. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. "I found it," she said, her voice shaking. Her will. Marcus, it says everything goes to me. Everything. The business, the properties, the investments, all of it. $18 million. What Cassie didn't know was that the testament she'd found was the first one I'd created, dated 6 years ago, shortly after Thomas died. It was the simplest version, the one I'd written when I still believed my daughter would grow into a responsible adult who deserved an inheritance. I'd updated it 4 times since then, each version more complex, adding conditions and requirements. Only the most recent version, dated 8 months ago, was registered with the state and legally valid. But Cassie didn't know that. She thought she'd found the real thing. There's more, she told Marcus on the phone. There's a clause about medical power of attorney. If she's incapacitated, I have the right to make decisions about her care and her assets. Marcus, if she stays in this coma, I can access everything. Are you sure? Marcus's voice was eager. Can you use that to get the money we need? I think so. I need to talk to a lawyer, but if this document is legitimate, I should be able to sell some properties, enough to cover your debt and more. Baby, you're amazing. This is it. This is our chance. Don't let your mother's control freak friends talk you out of this. That Dorothy woman, she's going to try to stop you. Don't listen to her. This is your inheritance. You deserve it. Dorothy stopped the video again. She came to my office that afternoon, said she needed legal advice about executing your will. I told her that executing a will only happens after death, and that you were very much alive. She showed me the testament, the fake one, and I had to pretend I'd never seen it before. I told her it would be complex, that there were legal procedures, that she should wait until you recovered. But she didn't wait. No, she went to Morrison & Associates, that shark firm in Midtown that'll do anything for money. They drew up a medical power of attorney based on the fake testament and got a judge to approve it on emergency grounds. By the time I found out, she'd already met with 3 real estate brokers. Dorothy pulled up more documents on her iPad. The Park Avenue apartment listed yesterday for $4.2 million. The Hamptons house goes on the market today, estimated value $2.8 million. And she's in negotiations with a developer for the Brooklyn commercial building, $1.7 million. Total, $8.7 million, just like you heard her say on the phone. How close is she to actually closing these sales? The Park Avenue apartment has an offer. $3.9 million, all cash. Buyer wants to close in 2 weeks. The other properties are generating interest, but no offers yet. I absorbed this information, feeling oddly calm. Maybe it was the medications. Maybe it was just that I'd moved past shock into a cold, clear space where emotion couldn't touch me. What about the forensic analysis of the power of attorney? Dorothy pulled up another file. I had Miriam Goldstein look at it. She's testified in 37 forgery cases. Never been wrong. The signature isn't yours. It's good, very good, but not perfect. The pressure points are wrong, and the loop on your A in Ashford is slightly different from your actual signature. She can testify that this document is definitely forged. So we can prove fraud. Absolutely. And I've traced the document's creation. It was produced by a paralegal at Morrison & Associates named Kevin Chen, no relation, who has a history of cutting corners. I spoke to him off the record. He admitted that Marcus brought him the testament and asked him to expedite a power of attorney, paid him $5,000 in cash to rush it through without too many questions. Is Kevin willing to testify? He's terrified. He knows he broke about 15 ethics rules. But yes, with immunity, he'll testify that Marcus orchestrated the forgery. I nodded slowly. What about Marcus's background? You said you had more information. Dorothy's expression darkened. Marcus Devlin Hawthorne, 38 years old, born in Boston to a wealthy family. His father was a stockbroker who committed suicide in 2008 after a Ponzi scheme collapsed. Marcus was 22, about to graduate from Princeton. The family lost everything. His mother died 2 years later, cancer, but the stress probably accelerated it. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy. The man had experienced real tragedy. He became a stockbroker himself, Dorothy continued, working at Lehman Brothers, then Goldman Sachs. By all accounts, he was brilliant, made millions for his clients. Then in 2021, he was fired for insider trading. The SEC investigated but couldn't prove anything criminal, so no charges. But his career was over. And the gambling? Started in college, got worse after his mother died. Online poker mostly, but also high-stakes games in underground casinos. He's been banned from every legitimate casino on the East Coast. The current debt, $340,000, is to Dmitry Volkov, who runs a loan operation in Brighton Beach. Very dangerous people, Viv. They've been connected to 2 murders and multiple assaults. And how did Marcus meet Cassie? That charity gala wasn't an accident. I checked the guest list. Marcus wasn't invited. He showed up with a woman named Patricia Breslin, 62, widow of a hedge fund manager. She'd been dating Marcus for 3 months. He dumped her the day after the gala. Patricia filed a police report claiming he'd stolen $50,000 from her account, but dropped it when he threatened to release intimate photos. My hands clenched on the hospital blanket. He's done this before, multiple times. At least 3 times that I can confirm. He finds wealthy, lonely women, usually older, recently widowed or divorced. He romances them, gains their trust, takes what he can, then disappears. Cassie is different because she's younger and has access to much more money. She's his biggest score yet. I thought about my daughter, her desperate need for love and validation, her years of aimless drifting. She was the perfect victim for someone like Marcus, and I had made her that way by giving her everything except the tools to recognize when she was being used. There's one more thing, Dorothy said quietly. She pulled up a final video, this one from yesterday. Cassie and Marcus were in my bedroom at the penthouse, my private space, the room I'd shared with Thomas, where his photo still sat on my nightstand. They were packing, suitcases open on my bed, clothes being folded and organized. Marcus was going through my jewelry box, examining pieces, setting aside the most valuable. The pearl necklace Thomas gave me for our 25th anniversary, the diamond earrings from our 10th, the emerald bracelet he bought me when Cassie was born. These should get us another 100,000 easy, Marcus said, holding up the pearls. Your mother won't need them where she's going. Cassie flinched. Don't say that. She's not dead. She could still wake up. Baby, be realistic. The doctors said she might never regain consciousness, and even if she does, she'll be a vegetable. Brain damage, the whole thing. It's tragic, but it's also an opportunity. For you to finally be free. For us to finally start our life together. He pulled out his phone and showed Cassie something. I booked us tickets to Bangkok. We leave in 2 weeks. By then, the properties will be sold, the money will be transferred to offshore accounts, and we'll be sipping Mai Tais on a beach while your mother's lawyers try to figure out what happened. What about Dorothy? She's already suspicious. She told me to stop the sales until Mom wakes up. Marcus laughed, cruel and cold. Dorothy is a dinosaur who still thinks the law matters. By the time she files her injunctions and her appeals, we'll be gone. And Cassie, baby, listen to me. You need to stop thinking of this as stealing. This is your money, your inheritance. You're just claiming it a little early. Your mother would have wanted you to be happy. Would she? Cassie's voice was small, uncertain. Of course. Deep down, under all that control and manipulation, she loves you. And she'd want you to have the life you deserve. The life we deserve together. He pulled Cassie into his arms, kissed her, and I watched my daughter melt into the embrace. She wanted so desperately to believe him, to believe that someone finally saw her, valued her, loved her for who she was and not for what she could provide. She had no idea that Marcus saw her as nothing more than an ATM with a heartbeat. Dorothy turned off the iPad. I've compiled 47 hours of footage total. Conversations, planning sessions, Marcus coaching Cassie on what to say to lawyers and brokers. It's enough to prosecute him for fraud, conspiracy, theft, and about 6 other charges. He'll go to prison, Viv, for a long time. Good. My voice was flat. What about Cassie? Dorothy hesitated. Technically, she's also committed fraud. She signed documents using forged power of attorney, initiated property sales based on false pretenses. A prosecutor could charge her as an accomplice. But she's also a victim. Marcus manipulated her, exploited her emotional vulnerabilities. A good defense attorney could argue diminished capacity, undue influence. She might face charges, but she'd likely get probation, community service, possibly a suspended sentence if she cooperates. I closed my eyes, thinking about Thomas. What would he want me to do? Protect our daughter at all costs? Or let her face the consequences of her choices? Take care of our girl, he'd said. But caring for someone didn't always mean protecting them from pain. Sometimes it meant letting them fall so they could learn to stand on their own. Here's what we're going to do, I said finally. Let Dr. Foster make his announcement. Let Cassie come here thinking I've just woken up, thinking she still has time to cover her tracks. I want to see her face. I want to hear what she says. Then we spring the trap. What kind of trap? I'm going to tell her I know everything. About the sales, about Marcus, about the forged documents. I'm going to give her a choice. Turn on Marcus, cooperate with authorities, and accept real consequences for what she's done. Or stand by him and face criminal charges alongside him. That's risky. She might choose him. Then at least I'll know for certain who my daughter really is. I opened my eyes and looked at Dorothy. You've known me for 30 years. You've seen me at my worst. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I think you're doing the only thing you can do. Cassie is 32 years old, Viv. She's not a child anymore. You can't save her from herself. All you can do is give her the opportunity to save herself. Whether she takes it or not is up to her. And if she doesn't, then you let her go. You grieve. You move forward. But at least you'll know you tried everything. A nurse came in then to check my vitals, interrupting our conversation. Dorothy quickly put away her iPad. The nurse, a kind woman in her 40s named Sandra, smiled at me. Mrs. Ashford, Dr. Foster will be here in about 20 minutes to do your morning examination. How are you feeling? Tired, I said honestly, but ready. After Sandra left, Dorothy stood up. I should go. I'll be in the waiting room. When you're ready to confront Cassie, just have the nurse call me. I'll bring everything we need. Dorothy? I caught her hand. Thank you. For everything. For being the sister I never had. Her eyes filled with tears. We're going to get through this, Viv. Whatever happens with Cassie, you're going to survive. You always do. After she left, I lay alone with my thoughts. In 20 minutes, I would see my daughter for the first time since waking up. In an hour, maybe less, I would destroy whatever fragile relationship we had left. I would watch her choose between me and Marcus, between truth and lies, between the easy path and the right one, and I had no idea which way she would go. The clock ticked, the machines beeped, and I waited for my daughter to arrive, carrying with her the future of our broken family in her unknowing hands. Dr. Foster came in at exactly 9 o'clock, right on schedule. He performed a brief examination, checking my pupils, my reflexes, asking me standard questions about my name, the date, where I was. Then he stepped into the hallway, and I heard him speaking to someone. Your mother is awake, Miss Ashford. She's stable and lucid. You can see her now. I heard a sharp intake of breath, then footsteps running. The door burst open, and Cassie flew into the room. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide, with what looked like genuine shock. For a split second, just 1 second, I let myself believe it was relief, that she was happy I was alive. Then I remembered the videos, the planning, the jewelry on my bed. Mom! She rushed to my bedside, grabbing my hand. Oh my God, you're awake! The doctor said you might never. They said the damage. I was so scared. Her hands were trembling. Real tears streamed down her face. If I didn't know better, I would have believed every word. Cassie. My voice came out rough, tired. I didn't have to fake the exhaustion. How long was I out? 3 days. You had a massive heart attack, Mom. They had to shock you back to life. I thought I'd lost you. I thought... Her voice broke, and she put her head down on my bed, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I looked at her bent head, at the brown hair so like her father's, and felt my heart crack open. This was my daughter, my baby, the little girl who used to make me construction paper cards for Mother's Day, the teenager who'd cried in my arms when her first boyfriend broke up with her, the young woman who'd held my hand at Thomas's funeral. Somewhere inside this manipulated, lost person was that girl. I had to believe that. I had to. Cassie, look at me. She lifted her head, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm just so relieved. I've been here every day, sitting with you, talking to you. The nurses said you might be able to hear me even in the coma, so I told you everything. About my life, about... She stopped abruptly. About what? I asked softly. She hesitated, and I saw the calculation flash across her face. What had she told me while I was unconscious? What secrets had she revealed? Just about how much I love you, how much I need you. That's sweet, honey. I squeezed her hand gently. Then I said, I need you to do something for me. I need you to tell me about the properties. The color drained from her face. What? The Park Avenue apartment, the Hamptons house, the Brooklyn building. I need to know what's happening with them. She pulled her hand away from mine, standing up quickly. I don't know what you mean. Cassie, please, don't lie to me. Not now. I kept my voice calm, gentle even. I know about the sales. I know about the power of attorney. I know everything. Her face went from pale to red. How? You were in a coma. You couldn't... Then realization dawned. You were awake. You've been awake this whole time, haven't you? You were pretending. You were spying on me. I woke up 2 days ago and heard you on the phone, talking about selling my properties to pay Marcus's debts. She staggered backward like I'd slapped her. You had no right to listen to my private conversation. And you had no right to forge legal documents and sell my life's work while I was fighting to survive. My voice stayed level, but I felt anger rising. $340,000, Cassie. That's what Marcus owes to Russian loan sharks. That's why he needs you. That's why he's with you. No. She shook her head violently. No, that's not true. He loves me. He's in trouble, yes, but he loves me. He's not like the others, Mom. He's different. He's exactly like the others. He's worse than the others. And I can prove it. I reached for the call button. I'm going to have Dorothy come in now. She has documentation, videos, evidence of everything Marcus has done, everything he's planning to do. I don't want to hear it. Cassie's voice rose to a shout. You're just trying to control me again. You can't stand that someone actually loves me for me, not for your money. He doesn't love you, sweetheart. I felt tears burning in my eyes. He's a con artist. He's done this before to other women. He targeted you specifically because you have access to my fortune. Dorothy has proof of all of it. Dorothy is your attack dog. She'll say anything you tell her to say. Cassie was crying now, her whole body shaking. Why can't you just let me be happy? Why do you have to ruin everything? The door opened, and Marcus walked in. I'd been expecting him. Predators always appear when their prey is threatened. He was exactly as I remembered from our dinner months ago. Handsome, polished, wearing concern like a well-tailored suit. Baby, what's wrong? I heard shouting. He put his arm around Cassie protectively, but his eyes were on me. Cold, calculating. Mrs. Ashford, thank God you're awake. We've all been so worried. Get out of my room, I said quietly. Mom. Cassie turned on me. You can't talk to him like that. I can and I will. Marcus, You have approximately 10 seconds to leave before I have security remove you and call the police." Marcus's mask slipped for just a moment. I saw the rage underneath, the entitled fury of a man who wasn't used to being defied. Then the smile returned. "I understand you're upset, Mrs. Ashford. You've been through a trauma. But I love your daughter, and I'm not going anywhere. You love her access to my bank accounts. You love that she's desperate enough for affection that she'll believe your lies. You love that you found someone vulnerable enough to manipulate into stealing millions for you." "That's not true," Cassie stepped between us. "Mom, stop it. You're being cruel. I'm being honest." I looked past her to Marcus. "I know about Dmitry Volkov. I know about the 340,000. I know about Patricia Breslin and the 2 women before her. I know about the forged power of attorney and the offshore accounts and the tickets to Bangkok." I smiled, and it felt like ice. "Did you really think I'd make it this easy? Did you really think I'd built an $18 million empire without learning how to spot a con?" Marcus's face hardened. He looked at Cassie. "We need to leave, now. Your mother is clearly not in her right mind. The heart attack has affected her judgment." "No." I pressed the call button repeatedly. "Cassie, you have a choice to make right now. You can walk out of here with him, and I will press charges for fraud, forgery, and theft against both of you. Or you can stay. Listen to what Dorothy has to show you and face the truth about who Marcus really is." "Don't listen to her," Marcus said urgently, pulling Cassie toward the door. "She's trying to manipulate you, like she always does. We need to leave New York today, get ahead of her lawyers, execute our plan." Cassie froze. "Our plan? Marcus, what is she talking about?" "Nothing, baby. She's confused. Let's just go." "The plan to drain my accounts and disappear to Thailand," I said. "The plan you've been working on for 8 months. The plan that requires me to either die or stay in a coma long enough for you to liquidate my assets." Cassie turned slowly to look at Marcus. "Tell her she's lying. Tell me she's making this up." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus stood there, his hand still on Cassie's arm, his face a mask of indecision. He was calculating, I could see it, trying to figure out if he could still salvage this, still manipulate his way out. Then the door opened, and Dorothy walked in, carrying her briefcase and her iPad. Behind her were 2 security guards and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Ashford," the man said, pulling out a badge. "I'm Detective James Morrison, NYPD Financial Crimes Unit. We've been building a case against Mr. Hawthorne for several weeks. Your attorney contacted us yesterday with additional evidence." He looked at Marcus. "Marcus Devlin Hawthorne, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Everything happened very fast after that. Marcus lunged for the door, but the security guards blocked him. He struggled, shouting about his rights, about false accusations. The detective calmly handcuffed him while reading him his Miranda rights. And Cassie stood frozen in the center of the room, watching the man she loved being arrested, her face a portrait of absolute devastation. She turned to me, and the look in her eyes was something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not betrayal, but understanding, terrible, crushing understanding. "It was all a lie," she whispered. "Everything he said, everything he promised. It was all a lie." I held out my hand to her. "Come here, sweetheart." She didn't move. She just stood there, watching as they led Marcus away, his shouts echoing down the hospital corridor. Then slowly, she sank to the floor, her body folding in on itself, and began to sob. I tried to get out of bed to go to her, but my body wouldn't cooperate. The tubes, the monitors, the weakness from 3 days of unconsciousness, I was trapped watching my daughter break apart on my hospital room floor. "Cassie, please." I reached toward her, my hand shaking. "Let me help you." "Help me?" She looked up, her face streaked with tears and something darker, mascara running in black rivulets down her cheeks. "You orchestrated this whole thing. You let me think I was getting away with it, let me keep planning and scheming, all so you could humiliate me, so you could prove that I'm just a stupid, worthless failure who can't even pick a decent man." Dorothy moved toward her, but I shook my head. This conversation needed to happen, painful as it was. "That's not what this was about," I said. "Cassie, I needed to know the truth. I needed to see how deep this went, whether Marcus was manipulating you or whether you were a willing participant in stealing from me." "And what did you decide?" She stood up, wiping her face roughly. "What's your verdict, judge and jury? Am I a victim or a criminal?" "You're both." The words came out harder than I intended. "You're a victim of Marcus's manipulation, yes. But you're also a 32-year-old woman who forged legal documents, initiated fraudulent property sales, and planned to steal millions from her own mother. Those are crimes, Cassie. Real crimes with real consequences." She laughed, a bitter sound that reminded me painfully of myself. "So what happens now? You press charges? I go to prison? Is that what you want?" "What I want is for you to take responsibility for what you've done. To stop blaming everyone else for your choices and start facing the truth about yourself." "The truth about myself?" Her voice rose. "You want me to face the truth? Fine. Here's the truth, Mom. I hate my life. I've hated it for 6 years. Ever since Dad died and you disappeared into your work and left me alone. I'm 32 years old and I've never accomplished anything. I've never earned anything. I've never been anything except Vivian Ashford's disappointing daughter." "Cassie! No, let me finish!" She was shouting now, years of pain pouring out. "You gave me everything except what I actually needed. Money, apartments, cars, clothes, but never your time, never your attention, never your approval. Do you know what it's like to be the daughter of someone like you? Someone brilliant and successful and completely self-sufficient? Someone who doesn't need anyone?" "I needed you," I said quietly. "I always needed you." "Bullshit. You needed Dad. When he died, you needed your work, your empire, your deals. But me? I was just this obligation you kept throwing money at, hoping that would be enough." Dorothy started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. "She's right. Let her talk." Cassie seemed surprised by this, but she continued, her voice shaking. "Marcus saw me. Actually saw me. Or at least I thought he did. He listened when I talked. He made me feel important. He made me feel like I mattered to someone, like my existence actually meant something beyond being your genetic legacy." "He saw you as a mark," I said gently. "He's done this before, Cassie, to other women. Dorothy has the evidence." "I know." The shout turned into a sob. "I know, okay? Deep down, I think I always knew. There were signs, inconsistencies in his stories, the way he'd always steer conversations back to money. How he'd get angry when I suggested he get a job instead of relying on me. But I ignored all of it because the alternative was admitting that I was so desperate for love that I'd fall for a con artist. That I was so pathetic that even the man who supposedly loved me only wanted my mother's money." She sank into the chair beside my bed, her energy suddenly depleted. "And now everyone knows. The hospital staff, the police, Dorothy, probably half of Manhattan by tomorrow. Everyone knows that stupid Cassie Ashford got conned by another loser. Again." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw past the anger and the tears to the frightened child underneath. The girl who'd lost her father too young and never learned how to grieve properly because her mother was too busy running from her own pain. "You're not stupid," I said. "You're lonely. And loneliness makes us do desperate things." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No. It's supposed to make you understand that what happened isn't just about Marcus. It's about us, about all the ways I failed you after your father died." She looked at me sharply. "Are you seriously trying to take credit for my screw-ups now? Because that's very on-brand for you, Mom. Everything has to be about you." "That's not what I meant. Cassie, listen to me. When Thomas died, I fell apart. I know you think I just worked and didn't grieve, but the work was my grieving. Every property I bought, every deal I closed, it was me trying to build something that death couldn't take away. It was me trying to prove that I could survive without him. Well, congratulations. You survived. You won. You built your empire and proved you didn't need anyone. Her voice was flat, exhausted. But I needed you, I said, feeling tears slip down my face. I needed my daughter. And instead of reaching out, instead of letting you see my pain, I hid behind money. I threw cash at our problems and convinced myself that was love. That was protection. Dorothy quietly handed me a tissue. I wiped my eyes and continued. I made you dependent on me financially, but I never taught you how to be independent in the ways that actually matter. I never showed you how to build something from nothing, how to fail and get back up, how to trust your own judgment. I just gave you everything and expected you to somehow magically know how to handle it. So this is your apology? Cassie asked bitterly. You let me commit fraud and get my heart broken and nearly go to prison, and now you're sorry? I'm not apologizing for stopping you from making the worst mistake of your life. I'm apologizing for creating circumstances where you were vulnerable enough to be exploited in the first place. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, What happens now? Detective Morrison said he was arresting Marcus, but he didn't arrest me. Why not? Dorothy spoke up. Because you have a choice, Cassie. You can cooperate with the investigation against Marcus, provide testimony about how he manipulated you, how he orchestrated the fraud, and in exchange, the district attorney is willing to offer you a plea deal, probation, community service, restitution, but no prison time. And if I don't cooperate, then you'll be charged as an accomplice. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. You'd be looking at 3 to 5 years in prison. Cassie laughed hollowly. Some choice. Betray the man I love or go to prison. The man you love, I said carefully, was planning to take the money and leave you. Dorothy, show her the footage. Dorothy pulled up her iPad and played the video from my penthouse. The one where Marcus was on the phone with someone, one of his associates, discussing the plan to ditch the girlfriend once they were safely in Bangkok with the money, where he laughed about Cassie being the easiest mark he'd ever worked, where he said, verbatim, she's so desperate for Daddy's approval that she can't see I'm playing her like a violin. I watched my daughter's face as she absorbed this, watched the last remnants of her illusions crumble. When the video ended, she sat motionless, staring at the blank screen. He was going to leave me, she said finally. Even if the plan had worked, even if we'd gotten the money, he was just going to take it and leave me. Yes, I said simply. I'm such an idiot. You're human. You wanted love. You wanted to matter to someone. Those aren't stupid desires, Cassie. They're universal. She looked up at me, and for the first time in years I saw her clearly. Not the angry teenager or the entitled adult child, but a woman in pain, trying desperately to find her place in the world. I don't know who I am, she whispered. Without your money, without men like Marcus telling me who to be, I have no idea who I actually am. Then maybe it's time to find out. I took a deep breath. Dorothy, bring me the real testament, the one that's actually registered. Dorothy pulled a document from her briefcase and handed it to me. I held it out to Cassie. Read it, all of it. She took the papers reluctantly, her hands shaking. I watched her eyes move down the pages, saw them widen as she understood. This leaves everything to charity, she said. The Thomas Ashford Memorial Foundation for Cancer Research. Everything. $18 million. Keep reading. She did, and then stopped at the clause near the end. There's a provision for me. If I work for 5 consecutive years in legitimate employment, demonstrate financial responsibility, and maintain independence from predatory relationships, I receive $2 million and 20% equity in Ashford Properties. She looked up. This has been your plan all along? Not a plan, a hope. I hoped you'd grow up on your own, that you'd find purpose and meaning without needing my money as a crutch. But when you didn't, when you kept making the same mistakes over and over, I realized I'd failed you. I'd given you fish instead of teaching you to fish for yourself. So this is what? Tough love? There was still bitterness in her voice, but underneath it, something else. Something that might have been the first stirring of understanding. This is me giving you the chance to become someone you can be proud of. Someone your father would be proud of. I pulled out another document from Dorothy's briefcase. This is a job offer. Assistant position at Ashford Properties. $45,000 a year. Entry level. No special treatment, no nepotism, no shortcuts. You'd report to James Chen, my toughest property manager. You'd work 40-hour weeks, maybe more. You'd have real responsibilities and real accountability. And if I fail, then you fail. And you learn from it and try again. That's how growth works, Cassie. That's how you build a life that actually means something. She stared at the papers in her hands. I don't know if I can do this. I've never worked a real job in my life. I know. That's why you need to try. And the $15,000 a month you've been giving me? Ends today. As of now, you're financially independent. You'll earn your own money, pay your own bills, make your own choices about how to spend what you've earned. I could see panic flashing across her face. Mom, I can't afford my apartment on $45,000 a year. I can't afford anything on that salary. Then you'll move somewhere you can afford. Get a roommate. Take the subway instead of Uber. Learn to budget. Learn what things actually cost when you have to earn the money to pay for them. You're cutting me off completely? Her voice rose. After everything I've been through? After being conned and humiliated and... After committing fraud and attempting to steal millions from me, I interrupted firmly. Cassie, consequences and opportunities often arrive together. This is both. You can take the job, start building a real life, and maybe in 5 years earn your inheritance. Or you can refuse, in which case you're on your own entirely. She stood up abruptly, the papers falling from her hands. I need time to think. This is too much. You're asking me to completely change my entire life. I'm giving you the chance to finally start having a life of your own, instead of just being my dependent. What if I can't do it? What if I try and fail? Then you'll have tried, which is more than you can say about the last 6 years. I softened my voice. Cassie, I'm not trying to punish you. I'm trying to save you. From yourself. From men like Marcus. From a future where you're 60 years old and still drifting, still dependent, still angry at a mother who's been dead for years. She picked up the job offer, reading it again. When would I start? Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. That's in 3 days. Yes. She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw Thomas in her eyes again. That stubborn determination he'd had, the pride that wouldn't let him quit even when the cancer was eating him alive. And the legal situation with Marcus? The fraud charges? You cooperate fully with Detective Morrison. You testify against Marcus. You accept whatever plea deal the DA offers. You make restitution for any damages caused by the fraudulent sales. Dorothy has already negotiated that down to community service and a payment plan based on your new salary. So I have to choose. Accept your terms or face prison. No, I said quietly. You have to choose between continuing to be a victim of your own choices or starting to take control of your life. The legal consequences are happening regardless. This is about what comes after. Cassie was quiet for so long, I thought she might just walk out. Then she said, I'll need to find an apartment, somewhere cheap. Dorothy can help you with that. And I'll need to figure out how to use the subway. There's an app for that. And her voice broke. I'll need to figure out how to live without you fixing everything for me. Yes, I said gently. You will. She walked to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. I'm scared, Mom. I'm terrified of failing, of being alone, of discovering that without your money, I'm nothing. Then you'll discover what I discovered after your father died, that we're stronger than we think, that we can build ourselves from nothing, that our worth isn't defined by our bank accounts or our relationships or our parents' accomplishments. I paused. And you won't be alone, Cassie. You'll have Dorothy to help you navigate the legal issues. You'll have me, not as a checkbook, but as a mother. And you'll have yourself, maybe for the first time in your life. She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. For Marcus, for the fraud, for being such a disappointment. Come here, I said. She came to my bedside, and I took her hand. You're not a disappointment. You're a work in progress, just like I am, just like your father was, just like every human being trying to figure out how to live a meaningful life. Do you really think I can do this? Work a real job, live on a budget, be a normal person? I think you're Thomas Ashford's daughter, and if he could build a successful architecture firm from nothing, if I could turn 800,000 into 18 million, then you can certainly handle being an assistant property manager. She laughed through her tears. That's a low bar, Mom. We all start somewhere. I squeezed her hand. Take the weekend to find an apartment, move your things, prepare yourself. Monday morning, 9 a.m., James will be waiting for you. Don't be late. What if I hate it? Then you'll hate it for 5 years and earn $2 million. Or you'll find meaning in it and build something you're proud of. Either way, you'll have earned something on your own. That's worth more than any amount of money I could give you. She nodded slowly, wiping her face. Okay, I'll try. I'll actually try this time. Dorothy handed her some tissues and the job offer paperwork. Sign here and here. You'll need to provide identification and fill out tax forms before Monday. While Cassie signed the documents, I leaned back against my pillows, exhausted. My chest ached, my head throbbed, but underneath all that was something I hadn't felt in 6 years. Hope. Real, fragile, terrifying hope that maybe my daughter and I could find our way back to each other. Not as dependent and provider, but as two women learning to respect themselves and each other. It was a start. Nothing more. But sometimes a start is everything. That was 18 months ago. I'm telling you this story now from my office at Ashford Properties, looking out at the same Manhattan skyline that has watched over every triumph and failure of my life. The doctors released me from the hospital after 2 weeks, with strict orders about diet, exercise, stress management, and regular cardiac monitoring. I follow most of those orders most of the time, which Dorothy says is the best anyone can expect from me. Marcus Devlin Hawthorne was convicted on 14 counts of fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and wire fraud. He received 6 years in federal prison. The Russian loan sharks got their money through a victims' compensation fund, ironically administered by the Thomas Ashford Memorial Foundation. Marcus tried to implicate Cassie as a co-conspirator during the trial, claiming she was the mastermind and he was her victim. The jury didn't believe him. Neither did the judge. Cassie cooperated fully with the prosecution. She testified for 3 days, describing in painful detail how Marcus had manipulated her, what he'd promised, how he'd exploited her loneliness and her complicated relationship with me. The defense attorney tried to make her look like a spoiled rich girl who'd orchestrated the whole thing, but Cassie held her ground. She admitted her role, acknowledged her mistakes, and accepted responsibility for her actions. The plea deal gave her 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and a restitution payment plan of $2,000 per month for 3 years. On her new salary of $45,000, that's significant. It means budgeting carefully, living modestly, making real sacrifices. She hasn't missed a single payment. The first 3 months at Ashford Properties were brutal for both of us. Cassie showed up late twice in her first week. James Chen, who I'd warned to treat her exactly like any other employee, wrote her up both times. She cried in the bathroom. She called me from her tiny studio apartment in Queens, 500 square feet, 1 bedroom, nothing like the penthouse she'd grown up in, and said she couldn't do it, that it was too hard, that she was going to quit. I didn't try to talk her out of it. I just said, "That's your choice to make," and hung up. She showed up the next morning at 8:45. Around month 4, something shifted. I noticed it first in the way she dressed, still professional, but she'd stopped wearing the designer labels I'd bought her and started shopping at places like Zara and H&M. Then in the way she talked about her work. Instead of complaining about James being too demanding, she started asking questions about property management, about market analysis, about tenant relations. At 6 months, she closed her first deal. Small, a 1-bedroom rental in Brooklyn. Nothing earth-shattering. But she'd found the tenant herself, negotiated the terms, prepared all the paperwork. When she came to my office to tell me about it, her face was flushed with pride. Real pride. The kind that comes from accomplishment, not entitlement. "I did it myself," she said, sitting across from my desk in the same chair where she'd sat 18 months earlier, defending Marcus. James barely helped at all. "I found the tenant through a referral. I showed the property. I handled the negotiation. Mom, I actually did it." "How does it feel?" I asked. She thought about it. Different. Good. Like I actually earned something for once. That was when I knew she might actually make it. At 12 months, she got her first promotion. Junior property manager with a raise to $52,000. She also got her first real friend, another junior manager named Sofia Rodriguez, who knew nothing about Cassie's background or family money. They started having lunch together, going to movies, splitting cheap bottles of wine in Cassie's tiny apartment while complaining about difficult tenants and impossible deadlines. "I think Sofia actually likes me," Cassie told me during one of our now weekly dinners. We'd started that tradition 6 months in. Nothing fancy, just Chinese takeout in my penthouse on Sunday nights. Not because of who my mother is or what I can do for her, just because she thinks I'm funny and good at my job. "You are funny and good at your job," I said. She looked at me with surprise, and I realized it might have been the first time I'd ever said that to her. The first time I'd acknowledged her for something she'd accomplished rather than something I'd provided. "Thanks, Mom," she said quietly. The community service hours took her to places she'd never been before. Soup kitchens in the Bronx, after-school programs in underserved neighborhoods, a women's shelter in Brooklyn where she worked with domestic violence survivors. One night, she came to dinner with her eyes red from crying. "There was a woman there today," she said, 35 years old, 2 kids, escaped from an abusive husband with nothing but the clothes on her back. She's staying in a shelter room smaller than my old walk-in closet. And you know what she said to me? She said she felt free for the first time in her life. That must have been powerful to witness. It made me realize how privileged my problems have been. I was complaining about having to live in Queens and take the subway, and this woman is grateful to have a bed and 3 meals a day. I've been so focused on what I lost that I never appreciated what I still have. That was the moment I started to believe my daughter might not just survive this transformation, she might actually thrive. Today is month 18. Cassie has been promoted again, associate property manager with a portfolio of 3 commercial properties and a salary of $60,000. She's saved $14,000 in her own savings account, money she earned, money she's proud of. She's planning to take Sofia on a trip to Montreal in the fall, her first vacation paid for entirely with her own money. She still lives in Queens, still takes the subway, still budgets carefully and shops at Target and cooks her own meals instead of ordering delivery. But she doesn't complain about it anymore. She talks about her neighborhood like it's home, about her neighbors like they're friends, about her life like it actually belongs to her. Last week, she closed the biggest deal of her career, a commercial lease for $1.2 million over 3 years. James called me personally to tell me how impressed he was with her negotiation skills, her market knowledge, her professionalism. He didn't know she was my daughter when he said it. I'd asked him not to tell anyone, and he'd kept that confidence. "She's one of my best employees," he said. "Hardworking, reliable, always willing to learn. You were right to take a chance on her. I didn't correct him. I just said thank you. At Sunday dinner this week, Cassie brought me something. A small envelope, nothing fancy. Inside was a check, $2,000. What's this for? I asked. The first payment toward the money I cost you. The legal fees, the broker fees for canceling the property sales, all of it. Dorothy gave me the total, $168,000. At $2,000 a month, I'll have it paid off in 7 years. I know I'm already paying restitution through the plea deal, but that's to the court. This is to you, for what I did to you personally. I stared at the check, feeling tears prick my eyes. Cassie, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You taught me that actions have consequences. You taught me that earning something feels different than being given it. This is me earning your forgiveness, or at least trying to. You don't have to earn my forgiveness, sweetheart. You're my daughter. I forgave you the moment you signed that job offer. Maybe, but I need to earn my own forgiveness for being so blind, so stupid, so willing to betray you for someone who didn't even love me. She met my eyes. I'm not that person anymore, Mom. I'm still figuring out who I am, but I know I'm not that person. I stood up and hugged her, and this time it felt different. Not the desperate embrace of a mother trying to hold on to a child who's slipping away, but the solid connection between two women who've been through hell and found their way back to each other. I'm proud of you, I said. Your father would be proud of you too. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. You really think so? I know so. He always said you had his determination. I see it now. Every day you choose to keep going, to keep building this life, you prove him right. We finished dinner talking about her plans, her goals, her dreams. Real dreams now, based on her own capabilities and ambitions, not on fantasies of being rescued by a man or supported by family money. She wants to eventually manage her own portfolio of properties. Maybe in 10 or 15 years, start her own firm. Build something that's hers. I have 3.5 years left on the 5-year provision, she said as she was leaving. Think I'll make it? I think you already have, I said. The rest is just paperwork. After she left, I sat in my penthouse looking at the framed testaments on my wall. All 4 versions, the real and the fake, the tests my daughter passed and failed. Tomorrow, I'm taking them down. We don't need them anymore. My daughter is building her own legacy now, and I'm learning to let her. Sometimes love means giving everything. Sometimes it means taking everything away. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it means watching someone you created discover they can create themselves. That's the real inheritance. Not money or property or assets that can be stolen or sold or squandered, but the knowledge that you're capable of building something meaningful from nothing, that you can fall and get back up, that your worth isn't determined by your bank account, but by the life you choose to live and the person you choose to become. I didn't give that to Cassie. I couldn't. She had to earn it herself, but I'm grateful I lived long enough to watch her do it.